Hello, boys and girls, moms and dads. Welcome to HeroesMart Academy. This is 5th grade social studies, week number 2. And today we're going to be talking about conflicts between the colonies and Britain. So the American colonies that were founded by largely pilgrims and Puritan fathers back in the 1600s started to get disgruntled sometime in the 1700s. And so we're going to be talking about the events that caused that to happen, and ultimately what finally led to the American Revolution. So I have a couple of just a little graphic over here, because they say a single picture is going to be worth 1,000 words. So if you can commit this picture to memory, you are going to understand what we are going to be talking about in this lesson today. So look at this chart over here. So the chart starts with the Roman Catholics. Roman Catholics, who are from Rome in Italy in Europe. They are the most powerful religious organization back in those days, and they are still very powerful in the 21st century as well. But they had certain practices which members of their congregation didn't really like. And because of that, the Church of England came to be. They split from the Roman Catholics, and they went to England and they formed the Anglican denomination. But the Anglican denomination carried lots of the practices of the Roman Catholics, and some people split away from there. And they said, well, you guys claim to be different from the Roman Catholics, but you're still causing a bunch of problems that we don't like right now. So they formed the Pilgrims because of that. Now the Pilgrims were persecuted, and they were running away from persecution in England, and they came to the United States. But there's another small sect of the Pilgrims called the Puritans. The Puritans were like the Pilgrims, were not consecrated enough, so both of them came to the United States, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, and that's where the colonies started. Now when they came over to the United States, the British sent a bunch of people to supervise them and to still enact taxes on the Pilgrims and the Puritan fathers, and all for the reason of supporting the British Empire back in England. So even though they are thousands of miles away in the United States across the Atlantic, they were still under the supervision of the British authorities. So that all happened in the 1600s and 1700s. But even prior to that, there was a movement of the Spaniards, who came from the Roman Catholics as well. They came to a place called St. Augustine, which is now in Florida. They came over there to colonize Florida. So between the movement of the St. Augustine in the 1500s and the movement of the Pilgrims, the Puritan fathers, these started potentially conflicts that will lead to what we know right now as the United States of America. And the people will finally champion this movement. Their picture is shown over here. The American founding fathers, especially during the Declaration of Independence, their picture is shown over here, which this picture can be seen all over the internet as well. So let's look at a couple of events right now in a chronological fashion. So you are going to see 1400s to 1600s, Church of England dissociates from the Roman Catholics. And between the 1600s and 1700s, the Pilgrims and the Puritans escaped from England and subsequently settled in the northern parts of the United States. Can you commit these 2 points to memory over there? Yeah, because this is history. You'll have to memorize a bunch of things over there. But just try to remember everything from a bullet point fashion. And then in the 1700s, in 1765, there came something called the Stamp Act. The Stamp Act, the Stamp Act, which was enacted by Britain to recoup the debts incurred from the war with France. American colonies were subject to these taxes also. So, and then right after that, there was another tax act called the Townshend Townshend Act, where the British Parliament asserted its authority to tax goods imported from Great Britain. And then there was a bunch of all these taxes over there, and then the American colonies were like, no, this is not fair, and they started to revolt against it. And this led to what we called in the 1770s, actually 1770 of March 1770, there was something called the Boston Massacre, where the British soldiers started shooting American rebels, and unfortunately, certain American people were killed over there. One of them, notably, was Crispus Attucks, who was killed in the incident, and the hostilities started because of that. And then in 1773, the Boston Tea Party situation happened, where the British enacted some kind of legislation that favored the tea company that Britain owned. And there's a bunch of things that happened over there, and then the American people rebelled against that. And then it started in 1774. It led to the 1775 of the Lexington and Concord situation. And then between 1775 to 1776, the American Revolution started. And then by 1776, the war was won ultimately by the Americans, and they kicked out the British over there. And then and then the founding fathers and the patriot heroes started putting a bunch of documents together to start what they call the American experiment. The Declaration of Independence document, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights were notable documents which were founded based on biblical principles to found the American nation as we have it today. A couple of founding fathers who were really pivotal to this experiment were people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton and John Jay and James Madison, of course. And all these guys were really religious people, even though the secular people right now in the 21st century want us to believe that these guys weren't motivated by religion. Of course they were motivated by religion, even though they had the downsides of being greedy in some certain pockets of their pursuits, but nonetheless they were motivated by religion. And there are plenty facts that show that they had some religious things to their motivation. So you're going to see over there George Washington, the very first president of the United States. Look at his quotation over there. It says, "You do well to wish to learn our hearts and way of life, and above all the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you are." So this is a quotation from George Washington over there. Look at this over there. It says, "The blessing and the protection of heaven are at all times necessary, but especially so in times of public distress and danger. The general hopes and trusts that every officer and man will endeavor to live and act as becomes a Christian soldier, defending the dearest rights and liberties of his country." You are going to see quotations from John Adams, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. He was a judge, he was a diplomat, one of the two signers of the Bill of Rights, and the second president of the United States. There are several quotations from this man that indicates his Christian and religious faith. The same thing is going to be applicable to Benjamin Franklin and John Jay. And all these guys were founding fathers, and they started what we know right now as the United States of America. So please go ahead and take advantage of this and try to write a two-page report that describes the events that we just talked about right now that led to the American War and then independence. Use the space below to convey your points. So what you are going to do is you are going to reference the bullet points talked over here, and you're welcome to reference those bullet points, turn them into sentences into paragraphs, and paragraphs into that article that we're talking about just for you, like that. Alright, so that's what we got for you, boys and girls, today. Remember, God cares about you, and so do we. Week number 2 of Social Studies, 5th grade Social Studies from HeroesMart Academy.
I'll be your hero's buddy, and as you study with HeroesMart